Hey, hi everyone. Thanks so much for coming out on a Sunday night to Saturday night. My name is Mara Webster. I'm the co-founder and head of programming at In Creative Company, and we have some amazing guests to come join us in conversation right now. So please join me in welcoming the wonderful Ella Hunt, Kaya Gerber, Matt Wood, and Katherine Curtin. And we have Andrew Bryce Feldman on his way. He's stuck in traffic right now, but he's heading to us. Yeah, Ella Hunt, Kaya Gerber, Matt Wood, and Katherine Curtin.
I'm so sorry. Thanks for coming and seeing our movie.
Did you guys see it in 4DX? I can't wait.
What is this movie in 40X? Like, what's the
Getting like electrocuted the whole time or something.
Like mist from the llamas, you know.
Okay, first off, congrats to all of you. The film is so fantastic, and it's such an incredible ensemble of performances. Ella, I wanted to start with you because I've heard you talking about playing Gilda and how one of the things that you realized early on was how many other comedians and actresses have kind of adopted certain stylistic things from her, or certain mannerisms. Yeah. And I was really curious when you were kind of studying Gilda, what some of those pieces were that you started to pick up in other people.
I mean, I think Gilda she really paved the way for women being messy on screen. Like, the kinds of characters that she played were maybe not characters that young women in that moment felt like they should be playing. Like, they weren't necessarily pretty, they were old ladies or little girls, and she used like every element of her body to tell whatever story she felt like telling. And I think that certainly in that moment took a lot of courage and was kind of daring in this way that now feels very familiar to us. Like, I grew up watching Kristen Wiig and Emma Stone and just so many actresses and comedians who have been given permission via Gilda, and also Lorraine and Jane Curtin. Like, all three of them were such trailblazers.
And Kaya, for you, I've heard you mention that there was obviously... Hey,
oh my God!
I'm so sorry. I'm unforgiven.
The streets of New York are harsh to make it through. Kaya, I've heard you talk about how, you know, obviously for your character there was less material available in terms of the research, and that you kind of focused a lot in on her relationship with Chevy and just kind of being there very much in support of him and the emotions in their relationship with each other. And I was just interested in how you kind of like used the emotions to focus when you didn't have as much research to be able to rely on as everyone else.
Yeah, I think I maybe had less pressure because for a lot of people it would be their introduction to Jackie, and a lot of the information out there about her is in relation to Chevy, and I think in the story it very much aligns with that. It's like, what role was she playing in Chevy's life at the time, and so I really wanted to focus on their relationship, and then also make sure that she was portrayed as her own person. And you know, the running joke in the movie is, oh, Jackie's, you know, gonna fall into another sketch, or if we're not careful, Jackie's gonna be hosting the show soon. But I really, in my research on Jackie, she really did have a lot of aspirations. She wrote with Chevy, and she did films of her own, so I also really wanted to make sure I was creating a very three-dimensional character and not just an accessory. I'm very sensitive to women being accessories to men in life and in film and TV, so I really wanted to make sure that she stood on her own as well.
I love those details that go into it. And Matt, in playing John Belushi, you've been such a lifelong fan of his work, and I know that even at your homecoming dance, you did a Blues Brothers dance to it. And just...
Do you have that video?
I wish. But I was curious about how, you know, taking someone that you're playing that you've been familiar with throughout your childhood and growing up, and just being so familiar with some of the nuances already, how you kind of deconstructed that idea of who he was, because what we're seeing on screen is obviously a very different time in his career and personally as well.
Yeah, you know, I definitely was always like a fan of his work. I kind of like got some like physical comparisons to him, like doing like community theater and stuff growing up. So it made my dad kind of make me watch Animal House and Blues Brothers like way before I should have watched them. Yeah, and I just like kind of like always connected to that performance style and like being, you know, like a short, stocky character actor guy who like came up in theater. You know, it was just kind of it just was a similar vibe and a similar energy and approach. I always just respected and loved his work. Yeah, and I was hoping some kind of project would come along, and that was this really, really cool one. But yeah, the Jason, you know, upon reading the script, you know, and figuring out from Jason that we made this kind of, you know, heartbreaking, beautiful choice to like show him on a low. You know, he's kind of famous for his mood swings, like big highs, big lows. Our movie's taking place in 90 minutes, so he's just in a low, you know, for the course of this. And that's just kind of the energy that we were kind of trying to bring through, just kind of balancing out the scales of this original 7 OG cast. So yeah, it was, you know, kind of like lonely and isolating work sometimes, trying to like figure out what that like, you know, those inner demons are that we can all relate to in many ways, I'm sure, that we all find in ourselves, like in our lowest moments. Yeah, and at the same time, finding that confidence too. One of my favorite things, like Jason would work off of little mantras and stuff all the time with me, and sometimes he'd come up to me in scene and just go, "He doesn't give a fuck," you know, and I'd be like, "Right, he doesn't give a fuck," you know, or he'd come up to me and go, "He has a gun," you know, and I would be like, it's like, right, I have a gun, and everyone knows it. So yeah, it was just the coolest, you know, creative process ever. I loved it.
Yeah. And Catherine, for you, I mean, one of the things that I love in watching your character on screen is, you know, she's been in elements of this world, but it feels like she's never been around a ragtag group quite as extreme as this. And so even for her, it feels like she's very out of her depth. And I was just interested in how you kind of approach that feeling of someone who's trying to create order and chaos, but also herself is trying to figure it all out at the same time.
That sounds like the story of my life. But you should see my apartment. Have you seen my apartment? Because the order and chaos thing might really, but you know, I am. Joan Carbuncle was based on a real person, and she had worked as a standard, you know, for I think 30 years. And she did Johnny Carson. She did all of those, all of their shows, and so I think she wasn't an innocent, but I think she knew her job, and I think she felt that she was holding up something that maybe was really dying, but that her job was to hold it up. And so, you know, I think also the fact that they were so young, that, you know, it's one thing when Johnny Carson's like, yeah, I'm gonna bend the rules here, you know, or whomever, but it's another thing when, like, I mean, you guys are, they were what, like early 20s, right? So, I mean, early 20s, you know, you don't, I think also it was a different time in terms of the way maybe age meant something, you know, and respect your elders. And I think there was she was so in over her head in terms of the way they just were off. And I love that. I love, you know, playing somebody who's like trying desperately to do something but failing, you know, miserably. And I think it's really fun. Come see my apartment.
And Andrew, in playing Neil, it's kind of delicious to watch the way that your performance of him, he just unravels more and more as these 90 minutes go on. And I was just curious about how you kind of tapped into building that arc where it's just like anxiety and tension and internal stress in him that just constantly mounts scene by scene.
Yeah, thank you so much for getting exactly what I was trying to do. When I first read the script, it was sort of like, oh great, I know what to do with this. It's this guy who doesn't know where he belongs, and he's just the sort of bumbling idiot character, and sort of like you were saying, Kaya, I had like very little pressure because nobody's ever heard of this guy. This is really the first time we're getting to talk about him. But then I talked to Neil, we had a couple Zooms together, and he, first of all, was just like, I can't even say it, you're playing me in a movie, that's crazy. Like he couldn't believe that he's part of this. But I kept asking him because he talked about how anxious he was and how judgmental he was of himself at the time. I was like, was there a part of you that felt like you couldn't do this, that you were in over your head? And he was like, I just knew that these were the first people that felt like my family, and I couldn't let them down. And that was it for me. That was everything, beginning to end. All that anxiety was coming from a place of, I have to do right by these people because this is the first place I feel like I belong.
Genuinely adorable.
Also, didn't he teach you some magic tricks?
He did teach me some magic tricks. I have a picture of him teaching. He's like, because I texted him. There was a moment that is not in the film, and I've taken this up with Jason multiple times, publicly and privately, where I was doing magic for the crowd, like warming up the crowd and doing magic for them. It was very brief. But in the script it just says, Neil performs a big magic trick. And I was like, what? I don't know magic. So I texted Neil and I was like, what's a magic trick you would have done? He's like, well, they never let me do that. They never let me warm up the crowd, but this is probably what I would have done. He showed me these amazing magic tricks, ones that he's working on now. Like he still is like just an amateur magician and he loves it. I'm obsessed with him. I love him so much.
Kaya, one of the scenes that I wanted to ask you about in particular was, the scene where Chevy's essentially being humiliated because
That scene, yeah.
I thought it was so interesting that when you first rehearsed it, that your instinct was to go stand by him and kind of be there as this pillar of support, but that Jason kind of pointed out, like, with the structure of everything at the time, that wouldn't have necessarily been the case probably, and how he kind of like helped you to find what wasn't necessarily the first instinct, but the right way to play it.
Yes. Yeah, the thing I've learned about Jason is he will always entertain your ideas, but ultimately he is always right. So he was like, yeah, sure, try. I was like, Jason, and I also had to kind of separate myself and go, is this me, Kaya, wanting to support my friend Corey while he gets humiliated? And also I'm looking at it through a lens of today. And so Jason really helped me to, bring it back to 1975 when the rules were different and maybe women felt like they had less agency in a situation like that. And so that's why I remained on that side, just staring at what was a prosthetic penis. But that was the purpose of that scene, was to bring Chevy down, because he has this quite, charismatic arrogance to him, and then you see a real moment of vulnerability for him in that, and that was very painful for me to be a part of.
Such an amazing scene. I mean, the look on both of your faces as he does it is just priceless. One of my favorite making of this movie facts is that the only two things that Jason had to go in and do SFX on in the film is, one, the clocks, because the audiences in test runs were noticing the discrepancies between different clocks. And so he went in and changed the times to make sure that they were all at precisely the right moment. And the other thing was the color of JK's prosthetic penis.
Yes, because when we were filming it, it was very clear that it was not even a prosthetic penis. It was ultimately a word that I shouldn't say. But there was a scene where I guess the haste in which Milton whipped it out caused gravity to kind of send it flying and onto the floor, and I didn't break the whole time we were filming, and that was the one time where I was like, oh. That got me. It was yeah.
JK also was only on set for like 2-3 days, and we got to talk to him a while, but like I didn't work with him. I was pretty much never on set with him, but it was this very small town that we were shooting in when he like passed us on his way to dinner, and we were talking to him, and as he was leaving, we were like, oh, by the way, you shot that scene today. How was the prosthetic penis? And he was like, we didn't end up using it. And kept walking.
No, it was prosthetic, guys.
It was prosthetic. It was not his. I don't know if that's legal, actually.
Matt, in terms of your performance as well, I also wanted to ask about just the side of playing someone who's so known for their physical comedy, because even going back to what you were talking about before, you also see him in this really vulnerable state, just completely slumped on a chair in his dressing room, and that's obviously not going to be these kind of big gestures and movements, so you kind of have these real swings between physical spaces, and I was interested about that experience for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was kind of highlighting what Jason wanted to highlight, which is like those mood swings, big highs, big lows, and also his like ability to explode, and how that was kind of what he was known for, like in his comedy, at the time. And it's, I think, kind of what happens in the movie is like, there's like a very thin line between like what's like the sketches and like what's actually happening in real life. Like, you know, it's like a real life situation and he explodes. It's the sketch and he explodes. So kind of like exploring those dynamics a little bit and being like, what is his comedy? Like, is it funny? Like, you know, like that, I mean, obviously it is, but, you know, just kind of exploring that dynamic and his range a little bit. But my auditions for the movie were like mostly, oh, my microphone, I'm back. Like we're, like the physical kind of like sketches. Like I had to do the Wolverines thing, so like the big heart attack onto the ground, a different, you know, it was mostly like throwing myself on the ground was a lot of the auditions. It was,
Teach yourself how to do the both.
oh my god, that was very difficult. I could do like the left one kind of, but every single time that he needed it in the movie had to be the fucking right one. So I
How do you
spent
teach yourself that?
like standing in front of a mirror for like hours, just like and like trying to not squeeze the side of your face that's making the eyebrow go up. We got there. We got pretty close, I think. I don't know. Maybe he did a little CG. Maybe there's a little extra CG, but no, I mean, you know, he's a very physical guy. You know, we did very physical stuff. My very first day of filming was the ice skating scene. That was a very physical day. I actually hit my head, had to go to the ER that day of filming.
It's a very dramatic first day.
It was a very dramatic first day. So that was the first day of shooting was the ice skating scene, and that was also my last day of shooting too. We had to build a 20 by 30 patch of ice down in Atlanta. And catch the last couple of lines there. So it's such a fascinating scene for me to watch because it's so, you know.
I know, it's such a trick, like a movie magic moment, because like we shot from Gilda's perspective of John that first night at Rockefeller Ice Ring, and then Matt had his fall. We're on camera. Gabe runs down to Matt in character as Lorne. And Matt sort of in character goes, I think I hit my head. And Gabe goes, oh, I can see, it's rising. At which point we call cut and you're whisked off to hospital. And then we're like, we only have Rockefeller Ice Ring tonight. We have to shoot the rest of the scene. So they came round to do the coverage on me and Gabe. And Jason put on a pair of ice skates, and I did the scene with Jason. So everything you're seeing of me and Gabe at the beginning of that scene is us acting with Jason. But it feels like
No, I
we're
love
together.
how it came together and how it worked out.
I also wanted to ask you all just about the structure of how Jason filmed this, because he so meticulously has choreographed every single movement and motion, and would have like these whiteboards with like sports style diagrams by the sounds of it. And I was curious in just like the experience of being on the other side of that, in him just coming to you and going, okay, so like this is the plan, you're gonna start here, you're gonna move here, the camera's gonna do this, and how that really allowed you to kind of calmly step into the space of portraying so much chaos around you.
I mean, that first big shot of 8H was insane, like truly, truly insane. It took days. It was our first day of shooting, was like our first day, all of us together on the set, was shooting that. And then it was so exhausting. We never knew if we had it because there were a million different things going on. Everybody has their own little section. So you do your section, you're like, I think that went really well, so I just hope all 14 other sections also go really well. So that's the take. And then we didn't use any of what we got that day. We went back and shot it again a couple weeks later, and there were rewrites. We shot it again at the end. Like, there were fundamentally different things about a ton of our characters by the time we went back. So that was pretty. It was like so exciting, and it's like, oh my god, this movie's gonna be crazy. And then we do it 9 times, and it's like, actually, maybe this is a nightmare, and I hate every second of this. And then we get it. And it feels like we get it, and it's like, oh right, we're doing a play. Like this movie is a play. But to Jason, it was football, I guess. That was how he wrote the diagram.
And I mean, for you, Ella, as well, you kind of end up in this like really beautiful like trio of characters, and there's all these little moments where you can kind of like see you playing in the background together, and just the chemistry. And you know, did that just give you a lot of immersion into the characters as well, and just being able to play and not necessarily be in the foreground of scenes, but also just build that texture?
I think all of us knew there was going to be a lot of time where we were going to be on set, but not necessarily in the foreground, just due to the nature of how this film is set, and that we're all in 8H basically the whole time. And I have to say that was kind of nerve-wracking going into it, just going, gosh, we're going to have so much time to inhabit these characters in the background, and that's going to take a lot of imagining and like creative visualization of what they would have been doing in these moments. And something I love about the finished product is that the three of us, me, Kim, and Emily, as the original ladies of SNL, really do feel like a unit. And that was partially because we just sort of fell in love with each other. And we were so in love with the three of them in this moment in history. And honestly, that wasn't really there in the original script. They were very much separate entities. And as we shot, it was like Jason was more and more gravitated towards building out these moments where the three of us were fucking around together. And I'm really grateful for that. Like, that's kind of precious to me.
I mean, it sounds like he left a lot of space open for all of you. So I kind of lastly wanted to ask you about the email that he sent everybody at the beginning saying, don't over-prepare, I want you to leave things open, because it sounds like you all did a huge amount of preparation despite that email, but then still kind of came in with that attitude and that idea of what he wanted you to come to set with.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just like a gift, you know, as like an actor to like get that, because of course you're going to over-prepare and drive yourself insane and do as much as you can, but for like the starting point to be like, hey, don't over-prepare, is like such like, and it kind of, you know, encapsulates his whole vibe around the set, you know, very easygoing, like comfortable, like warm, welcome set. Yeah, but like I said, of course, I watched everything, you know, again, that I could, because you're just trying to get like physical stuff, like body stuff, and like really just hit that so that you can like get that into your body, that so that you can really let it go. And that's what it felt like we could do on the set. It's like you do all this work, you know, hyper-focused work, and then when it comes time to do these big long takes and do the play, like Andrew said, like just let it go and hope, and then it sits into your body, and hopefully that's reflected in the performances.
Now I have the song from Frozen in my head.
Which one?
Let It Go.
Let It Go. What?
It was so amazing watching all of your performances. So congratulations on everything that you did individually with your characters, but also as an amazing ensemble. And thank you so much for coming out to support the film.
Thank you.
Just to learn about it.